Okay, welcome to the latest video of Science Guy 80. Today we are looking at muscles and how they help in gas exchange. So what I want you to do right now is take a deep breath. So you've taken a breath. I want you to think now, write down, jot down on a bit of paper, what is happening when you take that deep breath. Then I want you to breathe out. So when you breathe out, what is happening when you breathe out? Okay, what's happening to your chest as you breathe in and breathe out? Okay, jot some ideas down. We're going to go over them in a mo. Okay, also I want you to think about how your body makes this happen. Okay, so now we're going to move on. So what we're looking at today is how muscles help us breathe. So by the end of this video, you will be able to describe how muscles allow air to enter and leave your lungs. And then you'll be able to describe what happens during the process of gas exchange, including inhalation and exhalation. And why we're looking at it, well, basically, it keeps us alive. It's that simple. We're going to look at some key words, look at key structures, model of the rib cage, diagram annotations, and we're going to review basically what we've learned from this video at the end. So coming up, here's our keywords activity. I want you to pause the video. I want you to write down the keywords and I want you to match them to the definitions. They're not in order, so pause it, have a go. We're going to go over the answers very shortly. So here are the answers, guys. So respiration. It is the process in which energy is released from substances so it can be used by the organism. Gas exchange basically is where one gas is swapped for another. So have a think about what gases those are. Inhalation means breathing in, and exhalation means the opposite, which is breathing out. And ventilation is the movement of air in and out of your lungs. Okay, so we're looking at some key structures now. So some key structures here within your respiratory system. Okay, so you've got your trachea, okay, which is otherwise known as the windpipe. You have what's known as the diaphragm, which is at the base or just underneath your ribs, okay, and then the intercostal muscles. Okay, so these are three quite important parts of the respiratory system. Okay. So why do we need to breathe? Well, we're going to have a go at a fill the gaps exercise. Part of it's cut off because of the video link, but we'll make do. So what do we think? So pause it, write it out, or make some notes. Maybe do a revision web or a mind map or some flashcards. So here we go. Here's the answer. So the breathing system basically provides the body with oxygen for respiration. It also gets rid of waste products of respiration, and that waste product is the gas known as carbon dioxide or CO2. Breathing in then is called, we had a look at it earlier with the key words match up, it is inhalation. So when we inhale, you breathe air, which includes oxygen, into the lungs. Now breathing out, from the keywords activity, you should know it is exhalation. And when we exhale, we breathe out the contents of the lungs and we get rid of the waste product, and we mentioned it earlier, the waste product gas of carbon dioxide. Okay, so moving on. What we've got there is a diagram of the chest area. Okay, and so what you need to understand is when we breathe in, our ribs move up and they expand out. Okay, now this allows us to pull air into the lungs and it allows us to breathe. So the lungs also expand, they get bigger, okay, as you breathe in. Now there are two important groups of muscles, okay, that help with this, okay, and they are important because without them you wouldn't be able to breathe properly. Okay, they're the intercostal muscles. Now the intercostal muscles are between the ribs. Okay, they are what allows your chest to expand. Okay, and the diaphragm, which is at the base or just underneath the ribs. Okay, so we've got a couple of graphics up here. So we're going to look at the diaphragm. So the diaphragm is found at the bottom of the rib cage, as I mentioned earlier. It also, so when you breathe, okay, it contracts. So it contracts when you breathe in, okay. When you breathe out, it relaxes. Okay, so when you breathe in, it contracts and it gets big, you know, your chest gets bigger, and when you breathe out, it relaxes. Okay. Now the intercostal muscles, they're found, as I said, they're found between the ribs, okay, and they contract and relax, okay, to move the ribs up and down, as I've said. Okay, so mark those down on a revision card or on your bit of paper or in your mind map. Now, got the breathing system here. It's also known as the respiratory system, more commonly known as the respiratory system. It's what I refer to it as, but it can also be called the gas exchange system or the ventilation system. Now here, you know, there's an activity you can do. You could make a model of the lungs to help you understand further what happens when you breathe in and out. So you're welcome to do that. You can use some household items like straws, sellotape, balloons, and a big sort of drinks bottle, probably one of those huge squash bottles that your mum buys, and then you can just see what each part of the apparatus represents in the breathing system. So we're going to have a look at that. So in that model, the tube represents the trachea or the windpipe. The glass bottle represents, that's right, the ribs or the rib cage. The balloons represent, yeah, really easy one, the lungs, and the flexible sheet, which is at the bottom, well, yeah, it's at the base of the rib cage, so it is the diaphragm. Okay, so please make sure, you know, make that. Send me some pictures of you doing that activity. That'd be really good to see. You're actually partaking in some of the activities that are there for you. So here we're looking at we've got a diagram of the lungs. Okay, so in the lungs, oxygen enters the blood. Okay, and what happens there is carbon dioxide leaves the blood. Okay, so we'll look here, and this happens basically in something called the air sacs. Okay, so we call this process where oxygen comes in and carbon dioxide leaves, we call this process gas exchange, and it quite simply just means the exchange of one gas for the other. Okay, so that's gas exchange. It's where oxygen comes in, carbon dioxide leaves. Okay, now as I said, gas exchange takes place in the air sacs. Now when we breathe in, that's known as inhalation. Okay, so when we breathe in, we're taking in air through the mouth and the nose. Okay, now what happens when we're taking in air? The muscles between our ribs, they contract. Those intercostal muscles, they contract, okay, and they pull the ribs, the rib cage, up and out, okay, making it expand. This gives the lungs room to expand themselves, to fill up with enough air that your body needs. Now what happens to the diaphragm at this point, okay, is that the diaphragm, that also contracts, but it pulls, it contracts and pulls it down. Okay, so the muscles in the diaphragm, they contract, pulling it down. Okay. Now the next step, so when you breathe out, that is known as exhalation. Okay, so air's forced out of the lungs through your mouth and nose. This is also happening simultaneously. So basically the muscles between your ribs, they then relax, okay, and your rib cage falls or sinks in. Okay. Now, at this point, at the same time, the lungs start to get smaller, okay? And also at the same time, the muscles in the diaphragm relax, so it arches up, okay? So, thank you for watching this video. So you will know now how, or you'll be able to describe how muscles allow air to enter and leave our lungs. You also, from this video, know how to describe what happens during the process of gas exchange, including inhalation and exhalation. Remember, inhalation is breathing in, exhalation is breathing out. So when we breathe in, we're breathing in oxygen. When we're breathing out, we're breathing out carbon dioxide, okay? And that process is known as gas exchange. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and we'll see you again soon for another one. See you soon.